Previously, we talked about what an HCP is and the type of HCPs that the MSL interacts with. We know the HCP interacts with a variety of people such as KOLs or key opinion leaders. They can also interact with advanced practitioners, pharmacists, and even clinical trial coordinators. But what type of information do HCPs and KOLs like to receive from the MSL? That's what we're going to focus on today. So let's take a deep dive into what information the KOLs typically like to receive. KOLs are the main point of contact for the MSL, and KOLs will likely want a lot more information from the MSL than any other HCP. KOLs like to receive new information from the company from data releases. This can be scientific presentations. This can be any type of scientific presentation. It could be at a congress, it could be a data presentation, or it could even be a manuscript. All new data regardless of phase. And what this means is sometimes HCPs actually want more information than just phase 3. They want phase 1, preclinical, phase 2, phase 3, and so on. It really just depends on the KOL. KOLs also like to receive new phase 3 data. They like to receive this data because these data, if the study is positive, will have the biggest impact on their current clinical treatment decisions. When they see a positive phase 3 clinical trial, this is really going to impact how they think about their patients and the treatment landscape in the upcoming months. Other things the HCP could want would be adverse events information and potential AE management materials. They like these materials, especially if it's a new compound of interest that has a new safety profile. The other thing HCPs and KOLs are often interested in are the recent approvals of new compounds. The recent approval of new compounds has a big impact on their current treatment decisions and how they treat patients on the day-to-day. Another thing HCPs might be interested in is the preclinical or biomarker data. If an HCP or a KOL has a scientific laboratory or has scientific interest in preclinical work or biomarker work, then this could be another area of interest that they would potentially want more information about. KOLs also like to receive information about investigator-sponsored studies. They like to have discussions around investigator-sponsored studies or IISs. If they have an ongoing IIS that's currently running with the company, they definitely want updates and they want to stay up to date on how the study is going and the progress throughout the whole entire process. KOLs also like publication opportunities. This can be authorship opportunities and even clinical trial opportunities to have publications. Another thing HCPs or KOLs like to do is they also like to have advisory opportunities. These can come in a variety of ways. They can be advisory board opportunities, scientific speaking engagements. They can also be training and experiential trainings. Another thing the HCP likes to talk about is ongoing clinical trial information, and they like to often receive from MSLs a pipeline presentation. When an MSL does a pipeline presentation for an HCP, they're really talking about the new trials that are ongoing, if there is a potential opportunity to be involved in the current clinical trial, and HCPs really like to have these discussions with the MSL. Other HCPs the MSL interacts with include advanced practitioners, nurses, and pharmacists. These HCPs like to also receive information from the MSL, but it could be different based on their needs. Advanced practitioners, nurses, and pharmacists could want some new company data that has been released. They really like those phase 3 clinical trials because that's going to impact their day-to-day and how they work in the pharmacy or within their clinical hospital. Other information advanced practitioners, nurses, and pharmacists like to receive from the MSL can include adverse event information and potential AE management materials. These types of materials play a really pivotal role in how advanced practitioners and nurses play a role with the patient. And same with pharmacists because they're administering the drugs to the patients. So they like to stay up to date on adverse events, information, and also AE management materials. Advanced practitioners, nurses, and pharmacists also like to receive data from recent approval of new compounds. They like this because they know that sooner or later, this will come to formulary and will eventually be available for the patients. These HCPs, such as advanced practitioners, nurses, and pharmacists, also sometimes like to have publication opportunities. This really just depends on the HCP that you're working with. And sometimes they like advisory opportunities. Typically, the advisory opportunities for pharmacists and nurses are advisory board opportunities. The final HCP that an MSL could potentially interact with is the clinical trial coordinators. The clinical trial coordinators play a real big pivotal role in clinical trial recruitment and activation at their site. Clinical trial coordinators are not probably necessarily interested in the data, but they could be. Really, what they want to know is what are the new and ongoing clinical trials, and can you give a pipeline presentation to their organization? Once a clinical trial is activated, the MSL's involvement with the clinical trial coordinator significantly increases. MSLs act as the additional liaison with either the clinical research associate, CRA, or the clinical research organization, CRO. This can happen in a variety of ways, such as updating the clinical trial coordinators for protocol changes and enrollment updates. In addition to working with the clinical trial coordinator, the MSL does interact with them in other ways too. They give them a lot of information. They could talk about, during those pipeline presentations, they could talk about site recommendation. That's something that's really big, not only for the clinical trial coordinators, but also the KOLs. After a site has been activated, they will have activation visits or site initiation visits called SIVs. They can also talk about enrollment with the site and clinical trial coordinator and give any updates based on the clinical trial. In this video, we talked about the different type of information that each HCP likes to receive from the MSL. We talked about the KOLs. KOLs like to receive a lot of information, just really understand what they would like to receive from you, and you can do that during your introductory meetings. We also talked about advanced practitioners, nurses, and pharmacists. They all like to receive different information, so understanding what they would like is going to be really important from an MSL perspective. The last thing we talked about was clinical trial coordinators. They typically don't like to receive a lot of phase 3 clinical data or data-heavy information, but what they're really interested in is that clinical trial information. This video was just a quick overview. If you would like for more information, please follow me at kcsinson.com.